Russia just admitted something we already knew. Their shiny airborne infantry vehicle, the BMD-4M, has almost no armor. Yep, the pride of the Russian airborne forces, the elite VDV, or Victor Delta Victor, turns out to be one of the least protected fighting vehicles on the battlefield today. Moscow is scrambling to bolt on mesh screens and improvised armor kits, but let's be honest, this thing is basically a rolling crematorium waiting for Ukraine's drones to punch a ticket. Hey friends, Wes here, veteran of a couple of branches of the military, longtime writer on Medium and Substack, and your new favorite YouTuber. Today we're going to break down exactly what the BMD-4M is, why the Russians built it the way they did, and most importantly, how Ukraine can kill it. Spoiler, this Nerf gun could probably do it. For the first time, Russian state media and defense outlets are admitting their beloved airborne fighting vehicle isn't cutting it. According to a Russian study analyzed by btvt.info, wrecked BMD-4Ms collected from Crimea show the obvious. These things fold under pretty much any modern threat. Their so-called fix? A protection package consisting of steel plates and mesh cages bolted onto the sides, front and rear. The turret got a similar treatment, but none of this addresses the #1 killer on the battlefield, top attack drones. A $500 Mavic Air Pro can still drop an explosive right through the roof and turn a BMD-4M into a fireworks show. And yet, the Russian engineers who came up with this band-aid solution are being nominated for awards. Only in Russia do you get medals for using a band-aid when you should have used a tourniquet. Now let's get into what this thing actually is. The BMD-4M is Russia's latest attempt to give its airborne troops some kind of armored punch. Developed by the Volgograd Tractor Plant and KBP, and produced by Kurgan-Mashzavod, it was officially adopted in 2012. In Cyrillic, it's meant to be versatile, light enough to be parachuted, amphibious enough to swim rivers, and heavily armed enough to tangle with tanks. In reality, you can't have all three without sacrificing armor, and armor is exactly what got thrown overboard. The vehicle is all welded aluminum, which means on the front it can barely withstand 30mm shells. On the sides, it's only good against small arms fire, so yes, technically it's bulletproof, as long as the bullets aren't very big. Then there's the firepower. The BMD-4M is a bit like giving a backyard grill the firepower of a Bradley and then asking it to survive a tornado. Impressive on paper, I think, but tragic in practice. At the top of that turret sits a 100mm gun that can chew through armor or lob high explosive rounds into buildings. It can also fire the Arcan family of laser-guided projectiles, the kind of thing that turns a heavily armored tank into a wreck at ranges out to roughly 5.5 kilometers. That's a serious offensive capability for a vehicle that's supposed to be feather light enough to parachute out of a plane. Complementing the big gun is a 30mm 2A72 autocannon, the kind of weapon that makes infantry stop telling jokes and start finding cover. Oh, and let's throw in a coaxial 7.62 for the less glamorous policing tasks. 30mm gives the BMD-4M real teeth against light vehicles, soft-skinned convoys, and anyone foolish enough to stand in the open. Add remote thermal sights and auto-tracking into the mix, and you've got a turret that can find, lock, and engage targets day or night, while the vehicle trundles along. When the electronics work, the fire control suite makes this little beast behave like a much bigger vehicle. But here's the part that keeps the Russian tank crews tossing and turning all night. The choreography of destruction built into that aluminum shell. The vehicle carries 34 rounds ready to fire for the 100mm, plus another 18 in reserve. That's a lot of energetic metal and explosives stowed inside a hull that offers about as much protection as a Diet Coke can against anything bigger than a hunting rifle. So when a drone or an artillery splinter finds a seam or the thin roof, you don't get a disabled vehicle, you get a sympathetic detonation. In combat terms, that's code for instant fireworks. So yes, the BMD-4M can absolutely hand out hurt. Its guns are modern, accurate, and lethal. But lethal for whom? The crew inside, if hit in the wrong spot, often end up on the wrong end of their own weapons enthusiasm. It's the classic glass cannon problem writ across a chassis that was never meant to be a steel fortress. Powerful armament plus fragile protection equals a machine that can kill a lot, including itself, if you let it. Okay, so let's rewind to the design philosophy. Float, fly, or fight. Pick two, because you can't have all three. The BMD-4M problems are baked into its DNA. Russia wanted a vehicle that could be, first, airdropped from an IL-76 transport plane. Check. Swim across rivers with water jets. Check. Carry heavy weapons. Sure, why not? But to achieve all that, the designers shaved off armor like it was an optional feature. The vehicle weighs just 13.5 tons, half of that of a Western IFV like the Bradley. Although, to be fair, the Bradley is a heavy bugger. And most of that weight on the BMD is taken up by the weapons in the engine. Protection was never the priority. Survivability was sacrificed for mobility, which is fine if you're dropping into Afghanistan in 1980. On modern Ukrainian battlefields with drones overhead and artillery on speed dial, it's suicidal. The one thing the BMD-4M has got going for it is its mobility. Powered by a 500 horsepower diesel, it can reach 70 kilometers per hour on roads and swim at 10 kilometers an hour in water. The hydro-pneumatic suspension allows adjustable ground clearance, giving it some off-road agility. It sounds impressive until you remember Ukraine's fields, rivers, and wetlands are crawling with FPV drones and artillery spotters. Floating across a river might have sounded great in Soviet war games, but in 2025, it just makes you a slow-moving target on livestream. So with these glaring issues, what is Russia doing? Well, they're strapping on bolt-on steel plates and cage armor, like a bad Mad Max cosplay. Now, these upgrades marginally improve protection against RPGs or side hits from drones, but the top remains wide open. Worse, the extra weight eats into mobility, which was the whole point of the design in the first place. And there's zero evidence of electronic counter-drone systems being integrated. None. It's as if Moscow still hasn't figured out that drones are a thing. Now, how can Ukraine kill it? Because every weapon system has a counter. Well, FPV drones are the BMD-4M's worst nightmare, with propellers. These cheap quadcopters, often flying suicide loads or little improvised shaped charges, don't bother with the front armor. They climb up and punch the roof or the thin rear of the turret where the aluminum does basically nothing but offer moral support. Artillery and cluster munitions don't need direct hits either. The BMD-4M's light skin means that a near miss is often enough to shred its electronics, rip off hatches, and turn an otherwise functional vehicle into an immobile wreck. Cluster bomblets are especially nasty here. They spread the punishment over a wide area and are designed to find the soft spots the BMD can't hide. Anti-tank guided missiles laugh at the BMD's float and fight compromises. Javelins, in-laws, Stugna P, put any of these on target and the result is predictable. In fact, against something that's slightly protected, these weapons are almost overkill. You don't need an engineering marvel of a warhead to put one out of action, just something that hits the roof, the side, or the tracks. Mines are also the boring but brutally efficient answer. At roughly 13.5 tons, the BMD is lighter than a main battle tank, but heavy enough that an anti-vehicle mine will wreck its suspension or blow off a track in a heartbeat. The vehicle's mobility-first design means a broken running gear usually equals a dead platform. Stranded, vulnerable, and spectacularly unhelpful. Basically, Ukraine has a smorgasbord of options. And with the BMD-4M's ammo stored internally, most kills result in a catastrophic explosion. That's why Ukrainian Telegram channels call it the flying coffin. Okay, the BMD-4M represents a larger issue with Russia's airborne forces. The VDV were supposed to be shock troops, dropping behind enemy lines and seizing territory quickly. But in Ukraine, they've been used as glorified mechanized infantry, sent into direct combat with armor that can't survive. Russia has lost hundreds of BMDs, 3s, 4s, and 4Ms since 2022. Each time they try to deploy them, they end up as burnt-out wrecks on Ukrainian Telegram feeds. The BMD-4M was supposed to be the modern fix, but instead, it's just the latest victim. So where does this leave us? Well, Russia's BMD-4M is dangerous if ignored. It packs a nasty punch with its 100mm and 30mm guns. but its survivability is practically zero against modern Ukrainian tactics. Ukraine doesn't need Abrams tanks or Storm Shadows to deal with it. A kid with an FPV drone and a steady thumbs can turn it into scrap metal. Russia can keep bolting on mesh and handing out medals to the engineers, but the reality is clear. The BMD-4M is another Cold War relic dressed up for a 21st century war it was never designed to fight in the first place. The irony? Well, the BMD-4M's only real airborne mission these days is to fly through the air in pieces after Ukraine blows it sky high. That's it for today, my friends. For the love of all that is holy, we are this close to 100K subscribers. Remember, when you subscribe, it makes Putin's yacht depreciate just a little bit faster. And as always, glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. Crimea is Ukraine.